You ever hear the tragedy of Lord Garmadon? In all seriousness, thank you for tuning into Ninjago Nostalgic. I'm your least favorite Lloyd lookalike, and I'd like to welcome you to my new series, The Tragedy Of. It's a series where I analyze and dissect characters from Ninjago that are tragic in nature, whether they be good or evil, or both, like today's subject, Lord Garmadon, also known as Sensei Garmadon. He has the honor of being the first character that we are going to dissect from Ninjago.
Why won't somebody come and save?
Garmadon being an interesting character study of somebody who switches back and forth from being good or evil. Never completely good or never completely evil, for the most part. Like all of us, Garmadon has an inner battle of good or evil going on inside his mind and his heart and his soul. But, like some people, he lost his battle to the darkness. Garmadon didn't choose to be evil, he didn't want to be evil, but it was something that was thrusted upon him by the cruel hand of fate. Destiny chose for him to be evil, not by his own doing, but multiple exterior influences. Now, this is why I think he's one of the most tragic characters, because if none of these things happened to him, he would have been the nicest person. He would have been such a great leader and done so much for Ninjago. I think he could have been a better sensei than Sensei Wu, honestly. I think that it's tragic because there's so much lost potential there. There's so many things that I think could have been avoided. He could have protected Lloyd from Moro if he told him about him sooner, unlike what Sensei Wu did. So I feel like a lot of things would have changed if Garmadon hadn't become evil. But in order to properly analyze Garmadon, I think we should start from the very beginning. In the pilot episodes, one might see Garmadon as a average villain that just wants to take over the world and make it into his own image. Even the story that his own brother Sensei Wu tells is making it sound more like he was corrupted by the golden weapons of Spinjitzu and wanting to possess them himself. But there's more to his story. We find out later in the pilot episodes with the lines, "Father is no longer here. You were always his favorite." You might not come to the conclusion that he was corrupted against his will by a snake bite, but you can come to a conclusion that there is something deeper there to his character, and it is explored a lot more in Season 1 about his corruption, due to the Great Devourer biting him, and slowly but surely, and tragically, corrupting him and setting him on a course to become one of the most infamous villains in Ninjago. Typically, when it comes to evil people, the argument of nature versus nurture comes up. And in the case of Garmadon, I obviously do believe that it is nurture. Nature being somebody who's born wicked and evil, and nurture being environmental factors and just developmental influences typically. And not that Garmadon had a bad childhood or he had an abusive family or something like that that would turn him into that. After years of the venom slowly but surely taking over Garmadon, it finally takes its toll and it drives him over the edge, and he goes for the golden weapons. And this causes the battle that was mentioned at the beginning of the series between Wu and Garmadon, the consequences of which causing Garmadon to fall to the darkness and become the king of the underworld. Now, this is where he starts to accept and embrace his role as an evil Dark Lord. Garmadon's corruption and then later acceptance of evil in the beginning is a little bit more gray.
Ray! The world is gray, Jack!
At least earlier on, but I would say that later on it is a little more clean cut. But for now, let's talk about the venom of the Great Devourer. And when I say he was accepting of evil, what I mean is that he was conscious and aware of his actions. He knew what he was doing. It's not like there was nothing left, no reason, no conscience, no understanding, even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, good or evil, right or wrong. I know I'm making a lot of references today, and I would be lying if I said I'm sorry, but I'm having fun with this episode, what can I say? And if you want to complain about it, I got some advice for you. Garmadon wanted to make the world into his own image, And I feel like a lot of us would want to do the same thing, or at least change it to be less cruel and less rotten. But people can be more cruel and more rotten in the world if they allow themselves to become that. And I feel like Garmadon got dangerously close to the sun a couple of times and almost let himself become that. Some of Garmadon's reasons for wanting to make the world into his own image are relatable. You can feel for him because he feels like his family was taken away from him by destiny, and I feel like it's tragic, it's heart-wrenching, but there is a line that has to be drawn where he disrupts the balance of good and evil in Ninjago, and the Overlord comes back. He should have listened to his family, but he didn't, and the responsibility has to shift onto him now because it was his fault. He crossed that line, and he was aware of what he was doing. So Garmadon was always and will always be a deeply flawed character, but that's what makes him so interesting. That's what makes him so real and grounded. He's one of the most interesting characters I've ever seen in fiction, and I really want to see more of him, and I hope we do get to see more of him in Ninjago. I really liked seeing him be a role model in Sensei in seasons 3 and 4, and I wish we got to see more of it because it was just so wholesome to see, and I loved it. The Sensei Garmadon arc is one of the most fascinating things of the show, one of my personal favorite things that the show has ever done. His redemption and his transformation into being one of the greatest characters. I mean, he was already a good character, but this cemented him as one of the greatest characters of the series, if not the greatest character of the series. And I love how, even though the argument can be made that he's not liable for what he did because of the venom corrupting him, he still feels guilty for it. He still feels bad for it. He still feels the need, like he is obligated to make up for his past and his evil doing. And he is a sensei. He's trying to teach students to fight without fighting. He swore off fighting. I love that he is trying so hard. And he's such a great father, too. He's such a great father as a sensei. He's there for his son. He's trying to teach his son. He loves his son. And he broke his oath, to stop fighting once they took his son from him. Because in that one scene where they say, you swore off to not fight again, and he says, when you took my son from me, all bets were off. That was just so badass. And I was like, that is the best dad to ever exist. So I really loved that scene a lot. I'm saddened that we didn't get more of Sensei Garmadon, but I believe in the principle, leave with people wanting more instead of leaving when people have had enough. And we definitely could have gotten more. I think they underdid it a little bit. It would have been cool to have one more season with him, but I understand why they didn't. You can't have two senseis, like I said, only one can remain. And the reason Garmadon had to leave was so well executed and very indicative of his character being a good person deep down. No matter where he goes, no matter what he does, Garmadon does not feel like he will ever be able to make up for his past, and sacrificing himself to him is just the least that he can do. And I think that deep down that shows how good of and how moral of a person that he is. He will not be able to forgive himself. He said himself he's not proud of his past, but he has no regrets. Because if things hadn't happened the way they did, Lloyd would not exist. Stealing his brother's letter was really messed up, and tricking Misako into thinking that it was from him is also messed up, and everything that he did as Lord Garmadon was wrong. But again, he is trying so hard to make up for that, and I feel like he has. He doesn't believe he has, but I believe that he has. And I feel like his send-off was really emotional and really well done. He doesn't want to go, but he does it because he cares about his wife, he cares about his brother, he cares about his son, he cares about Ninjago. And they could have just stopped there, just sent him off and never bring him back again, but they brought him back in season 5 in a really well done and emotional scene. And he's locked up in chains in the cursed realm, and Lloyd and him reunite thinking they would never see each other ever again. And they did it so well. And the words, "You're a good boy and you'll be a great man. What sort of man is up to you?" Those words have always stuck with me, but sadly for Garmadon, for his loved ones, and for Ninjago, this would not be the end of his character. When it comes to the resurrection of Garmadon, he was resurrected for the Ninjago movie, but that was a different universe, so he didn't really die in that universe. So I was glad to see him back. I was glad to see a different take on him, and I think Justin Theroux did an amazing job with the character. I love how he handled it, and I didn't have a problem with it. But when I heard Garmadon was brought back as his old evil self for the show, I thought it was an ill-advised decision. I didn't think that it was going to work, and it would undo the progress that his character made.
What the hell happened here?
But my tune changed when I watched Sons of Garmadon and then Hunted and then March of the Oni, and I saw how they handled it. And Garmadon does not undo his progress by being brought back. This is not the same Garmadon we've known. This is not the one who would not hurt his son back in Season 1. This new Garmadon was another beast. This was something else. This Garmadon was cruel, heartless, vicious. He would beat his son nearly to death in front of the entire city to humiliate him, and also spit in his face by saying he has no son. This really did a great job of hammering home that this Garmadon was not the same Garmadon. Even Garmadon back in the day, he was evil, but he was never nearly this evil. This is a monster. I think that really built up the dread of seasons 8 and 9, that this character was unpredictable, he was terrifying. But after he's defeated and hunted, and he's locked away, he's brought back in season 10 to help the ninja to stop the Oni, not out of the goodness of his heart, not because he's redeeming himself, because everything will be destroyed. So he's basically only doing it to save himself. But after this begins the redemption, the decay after resurrection, the decay of the evil. And the sad part is Garmadon is still a shell of his former self. He's not Sensei Garmadon. He's not that sweet, caring, loving father that he once was, and that terrific leader that he was. And that's the tragedy. There is no happy ending, only a bittersweet one. He's not as bad as he was, but he could still be better. That's just how the cookie crumbles. Thank you for watching my video dissecting Garmadon and the tragedy of his life and his death and his resurrection. I hope that you guys would be interested in seeing more of these videos in the future. Thank you all for the support. I love you guys, and remember, the resistance never quits.